In this video, we're going to look at an Android app that reads a local JSON file and displays information based on user choices from data within the JSON file. So we've done examples like this before, and it's just different in the way we're going to be handling the data. So the NFL teams are going to be categorized both by conference and by division. So we're going to read the file and sort of discover the divisions and discover the conferences, and then allow the user to choose a division and a conference, and then display the teams from those two choices, and then display information about what of the teams belonging to that conference and division, display information on the teams based on the user's choice of a team. Okay, so the code for this app can be found at the URL C. Okay, so here we can see both the JSON file that we are reading and then the app itself. And so the JSON file is starts with the curly bracket. So it starts with an object with a property NFL, which is then, by noting the square bracket, is an array. And it's an array, again, the curly bracket, and it's an array of objects. Those objects have properties like city, team name, conference, division, coach, and image. And then there are a bunch of those. And that's all is in this file, just all the various teams. So there's an object, a property, that property is an array, and that array is of objects with key value pairs. Okay. So then we are discovering the conferences. There's NFC and AFC, and they're in a spinner. And then we're just also discovering the divisions, which are east, west, north, and south. And then there, for each choice of conference and division, there are a set of teams, like 4, and then the user can choose a team. So right now we are choosing NFC and East. So the teams are the Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, and the Washington football team. And then if I choose a team, I'm showing its coach and a logo. So if I change the conference, I get a different set of teams. And likewise, if I choose the division, I get a different set of teams. Okay, so that is what we want to code. Here's what the JSON file looked like. The activity main was, there was a spinner for the conference, a spinner for the division, a spinner for the team, and a text view for the coach, and an image view for the logo. The logos in the JSON file, the image property has a file extension, and we know in Android that the resources do not use extensions, so we're going to have to write some code to get rid of that extension, and they're here in drawable. And just a word of, like, historically, I think one of the first times I used these images, I did not have the A in front, and Android, at least at the time, was complaining that that didn't obey its naming scheme. You're allowed to have numbers, but they cannot start with numbers. Okay, so we're starting with a letter, so we're okay there, but we're going to have to get rid of this file extension in code. Okay, so we looked at the raw, we looked at the layout, we looked at the drawable. We're only thing left is to go to main activity. Here are my imports. Charset, I'm going to read a file, so that's where that's going to come in. What's in the file is JSON stuff. I think at one point I had some try catch, and so I was looking for a JSON exception in my catch, and I think I eliminated the try catch. So that's why this exception, JSON exception, is grayed out. It's not being used. The widget is for all the things that you can see, the spinners, the text view, the image view. Okay. So the code, I'm going to have the code for loading the teams. Loading the teams can be called if I'm changing either spinner. So if I change the conference, I load up the teams. If I change the division, I load up the teams. And so I'm going to write the team loading method outside of onCreate. So here's my end of onCreate, and here's load teams. And so I'm going to be accessing things outside of onCreate. And so I tend to use a lot of late init when I do that. So I'm going to access that JSON array. I'm going to read in the JSON array in onCreate, but I'm going to also be using it in that load teams. So same thing for some of the spinners and the coach and the image view. So I declared all these things with a late init. So then I can access them in both onCreate and then later in outside of onCreate in that team loading function that I'm going to write. Okay, so this was all the declaration to connect to the interface, and then here was the actual initialization. Okay, so this is saying I'm going to initialize later, and then here is that later initialization. Okay. Here's my input stream to read my raw NFL file. Again, no file extension. And I read in the full stream. And then I know that I was looking at that file before, and I realize that it starts with a curly bracket, starts with an object. And so I know that it is, that my text is a JSON object, and I call that my JSON object. But then I'm going to get the array that I declared above from the NFL. The NFL property of that object is a JSON array. So that, and then I call that my JSON array, and that was declared at the class level. So that's going to be accessible here in onCreate, but also in that method I make outside of onCreate. As I said in the intro, there are conferences and divisions, and I'm going to discover them by reading the file. So I'm not going to, I know it's NFC and AFC, and I know that it's east, west, north, and south, but I'm going to read the file and allow that to be discovered. So I'm going to say, let me discover the conferences, let me discover the divisions. And then the user is going to choose a conference and choose a division. Or by default, when the program starts, the first conference and the first division will be selected. But let's do that discovery. So I'm looping through my array. I'm getting the ith object out of the array, and I'm grabbing its conference and its division. So, and then I'm saying I have some array of conferences, and I'm saying, if I don't find this conference I just got out of the ith JSON element, if I don't find that conference in my array of conferences, so index of is going to look for it. If I get an index of -1, that means that I did not find it. Index of is going to, the index is usually going to be start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So, and it gives me, this method gives me a -1 when it does not find it. So if I'm looking for a conference in my array of conferences and I did not find it, then I'm going to add it to my array of conferences. So this is me discovering what the conferences are. And likewise, I discover what the divisions are. Then I have an array of conferences, so I load them, make an adapter and load them up into the spinner for conferences. And I have an array of divisions, and I make an array adapter, and I use that to populate the array of the spinner of divisions. Then I need events for the spinner event for conference and the spinner event for division. And I'm going to load up the team. So when I have a spinner event, I need two methods: on item selected, on nothing selected. When the user chooses a new item, I'm going to load up the teams. When the user chooses a new division, I'm going to load up the teams. Okay, so that is down here. That method's down here in load teams. So the set of teams depends on those other choices. So the first thing I have to do is clear out any old teams that might be in there. And so I set the adapter for this, that's the team spinner, to null. That clears out any old teams that might be in there. And then I'm going to load up, I need to make my adapter and load up my teams that are relevant to the user's choice of conference and division. So I'm going to find out the user's conference and the user's division by going to the spinners. So I'm looking up the conference, what's the selected item in conference, make it a string. Same thing for division, make it a string. And then here I am looping over my JSON array and getting the, I used a J this time, get the J object and get its conference and get its division. And if it's a match on both conference and division, this is like a Boolean and, if it matches both the conference and the division that the user wants, then I'm going to concatenate together the city and the team and add that up. So we saw that over here, that this list was city, Detroit lines, city and team. Okay. Now I think at one stage I had done this just with spaces, and that became complicated because some of the cities like New York had a space, and that was okay because for a while none of the teams had spaces, so I could just be careful and sort of say the last space is the space I want to split on. And then the Washington team changed its name, and it changed its team name to Football Space Team. So now I had some cities had spaces in them and some teams had spaces in them. And so I just had to introduce a delimiter. I chose a dash in this case. Okay, so I've looped through, and if the division and the conference matched, I made a city dash team, and I'm using that array I just made, associating an adapter and using that adapter to populate my spinner. And so now my team, my spinner team, my third spinner is populated. And what if the, what's the action when the user chooses a team? So here is the on item selected for when the user chooses a team. I am getting what the user chose, and I'm calling it their team, but it's really a city team. So here I am splitting up using the dash as a delimiter to split up, getting the team and the city and the team separated once again. And now I'm looping through, and I want to find the team. The team names are unique, so I can just, the city names are not unique, but the team names are unique. So I'm trying to find which element, just doing a very cumbersome search, sort of by looping through and finding out when the team matches what the user chose as the team. And so when the team name that's in the JSON array matches the my team or the user's team, maybe that should say, then I'm going to show the corresponding coach and then load up the image. So I'm getting the image file from the JSON. You remember that that has the file extension. So I'm doing some substring manipulation here and going from the beginning of the file up to, but not including the period. So that's getting rid of that file extension. And then using that resource name, looking within the drawable resources within the package, and then loading up the team logo. And then the usual, if no teams are selected, then I'm not going to do anything. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you, just reading a JSON file and doing sort of a different set of logic based on the contents of that JSON file. So that's all. Thank you for your attention.